Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, John and Lee proudly present the greatest wrestling show ever!
I'm going to start the show with this silly pretense that I've not spoken to or seen you recently, because I've actually seen you today in real life. I saw you.
Wow.
Real life Lee. I know, I couldn't believe it. It was one of the most exciting things that's happened in the last 16 months. I was walking through town and I saw a strange looking masked man in the distance, and it wasn't like Rey Mysterio. In fact, it's kind of the exact opposite of Rey Mysterio. Like Rey Mysterio, but with a worse mask and a lot bigger. And it was you, Lee. So I've seen you in person. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. How are you? You all right?
I'm good, you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. So now, are we going to try and keep up some sort of pretense that this is recorded in order? Because we recorded the final last week because we got a bit confused, and people listening to this won't necessarily know that. So we could try and just play it off so we've done it properly and they won't find out till the final. What do you reckon?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's not pretend that this is actually the last episode we filmed.
Yeah, they'll never see through it anyway.
Yeah.
Cool. So this week's semi-final is Ric Flair versus Scott Hall with 6. Oh, it says part 1. I've got a YouTube video and it says part 1. So actually, are we going to be able to go straight to part 2? I hope we are. We'll figure it out as we go along anyway. Funnily enough, I was only reading about a match involving Ric Flair and Scott Hall this morning. I don't know if I've ever told you, I've got some books on Kindle. They're like £2 or something like that. I've been reading through them gradually over the last few years by some guy, and he goes through reviewing a year in review of, I think altogether he's done maybe 88 to 94, just reviewing the big shows, so the pay-per-views, maybe the clashes, maybe a few big specials, etc.
Big shows or the big show?
Big Show was probably only a teenager at that point, I'd have thought. He hadn't debuted.
I'd say that'd be quite an eventful book.
Yeah, so 1989, Big Show, gets a car, maybe goes out a bit, not so good. No, it's the big shows, the big pay-per-views and specials and what have you, mainly of WWF and WCW, but also latter days of AWA and Glow, Glamorous Ladies of Wrestling, did a show around then. But anyway, I find it quite easy reading. So if either I wake up in the middle of the night and my mind starts racing, I might just read 5-10 minutes because it just slows my head down a little bit, or it's something I can read before bed because it doesn't then kind of overly stimulate me. And I'm quite enjoying it, working through them over the last few years. And I'm on the 1992 one now, and I've just been reading the chapter on Survivor Series, which you may or may not remember.
Involves the Royal Rumble.
Well, I read that earlier on. So that wouldn't involve Scott Hall at that point because he was still in WCW as the Diamond Stud. But by Survivor Series, he's debuted as Razor Ramon, and he is on the same side as Ric Flair in that match. So it's Flair and Hall versus Macho Man and a recently turned babyface, Mr. Perfect. But that's by the by anyway. We're 4.5 years later here. The Road to the Great American Bash. So I assume Road to the Great American Bash just means it's an episode of Nitro, doesn't it? It's got to be. Thunder hasn't debuted by that point. It's got to be. So I thought this was only 10 minutes in total, but it's part 1's 10 minutes. So let's get cracking. For anyone who's remotely interested, if you YouTube it, it says 6.2.1997, Road to GAB 97, part 14. Ric Flair vs. Scott Hall with 6, part 1. Press in play in 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Now, the first comment I've noticed there, as in a comment from YouTube, says, now that was a good match. The selling was excellent from both guys. I'm not convinced it's going to be a good match, Lee. What are your thoughts?
Why do you not think it's going to be a good match?
Because it involves 1997 Scott Hall and Ric Flair. It's not 1994 Scott Hall and 1989 Ric Flair.
I'll reserve judgment.
Well, yeah, so Hall there, is he, the TV champion, is he there?
Oh, and that's 1, 2, 3 Kid, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's 6. So do you know why he was called 6 when he was in WCW?
Because he's twice the boy he was.
Well, 1 + 2 + 3 equals 6.
It does.
He was also the 6th member of the NWO, kind of. I think if you include Ted DiBiase as the manager at that point, he was the 6th person to come in. I think it was more a play on the 1, 2, 3 Kid. It's amazing still how young he is there. He's got to be maybe 24 there, because I think he was 21 when he upset Razor Ramon on Monday Night Raw. This is, hang on a minute, 4 years later, so it's about 25-ish, roughly.
Incredible. So just stepping back one moment, so you know the book you're mentioning.
Yeah.
So is that written from the viewpoint of a fan or from kind of a
Yeah, it's just some random English fan stroke author. I'll bring it up now. It's by a guy called Nick Temple. Literally, I think it just came up one day in my recommendations, in my recommended reading, whatever you call it. And for the sake of £2, I thought I'd try it. And it's just easy reading. Like most of it, I remember. It's nothing groundbreaking and new, but it's just nicely written and a bit of mindless reading. If I want something just for 10, 15 minutes to calm me down a little bit after the end of a stressful day, and I've run out of Rohypnol, then I turn to that
usually
book.
then after a bit of mindless, uninteresting reading, I just usually go to your blogs.
Brilliant. I thought that was coming. Very, very good. Well, our blogs in the last 2 minutes, though, don't they? So maybe you need a bit more than that. Yeah. Here's Ric Flair in his robe. So I didn't realise that in '92, when Flair was in WWF, at least according to the book I'm reading, they didn't want him to be the suited version of Ric Flair, so he only ever wore his robes, which I know he does when he's coming out to wrestle, but in WCW and NWA, he was usually suited outside of match time, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So I'd never noticed that before, but I'm sure if you look through late '91 to early '93 WWF with Flair in it, I imagine he's wearing his robe at all times, which is probably a bit random if he's not about to wrestle. To be stood there in boots, trunks, and a robe is a little bit weird, isn't it?
And this is also the era where it looks like his mum's cut his hair.
Yeah. Flair never had the best haircut, I'll be honest with you. It wasn't his strongest point.
No.
This is a little bit blurry as well. I think this was uploaded in 6th of March 2010. That's probably back when you had a 10-minute time limit, and was it 10 meg or 50 meg that YouTube videos could be back then, I seem to remember.
Yeah, it's a bit, isn't it?
Now, I know Hall's probably pissed, but it should be his vision that's blurry, not ours.
Very good.
So I did, yeah.
So there's no belt on the line here, is there?
No, it's... Hall was wearing a belt there, but because it was blurry, it's quite hard to tell which belt it was. I think maybe actually thinking about it, in '97 it's going to be the tag titles. I think Hall and Nash won them in late '96, I want to say, maybe Halloween Havoc, possibly from Harlem Heat, maybe. So I'm guessing at this point, so this is the 6th of February American date format, isn't it? No, sorry, it's the 2nd of June, 6.2. Yeah. So I'm presuming he's still tag champions there, because I know he was US champion and TV champion later on. I think the TV title was maybe in 1999, perhaps. There we go. Flair sent into the side there. 1, 2, 3 kids, 6 if you will. Give him a little knee to the back. Now, this is roughly around the time, actually, that Flair and Piper had a bit of a falling out with, particularly Hall and Six there, I think. They were annoyed by the way they were impersonated by them, by the NWO. And if I remember correctly, it all came to a head. It was the same night that Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels had their famous backstage brawl, a legit fight at Monday Night Raw. Same night, Nash comes back after their match, gets Piper, shoves him up against the door. Not quite the same level of fight as Bret and Shawn, but a legit fight backstage between two of the big stars, which was exciting times, 1997, boys. You don't get that nowadays, do you?
You don't. So is Flair a babyface here then?
I assume so. I'm pretty sure, just thinking about the timing wise, he probably would have been. I can't imagine anything like this. You know, imagine nowadays if, I don't know, Seth Rollins accidentally stiffed Ricochet. Can you imagine Ricochet coming backstage and putting him up against the door?
No.
Hey, did you see Ricochet at Money in the Bank? You know Money in the Bank this last Sunday? You'll be unsurprised to hear I flicked through it in 5 minutes. But there was like crowds there and people and stuff. It was amazing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was quite cool. Like, really, like legit normal crowd. Ricochet did some quite cool moves if you want to quickly YouTube it.
Yeah, I remember his Ricochet's entrance to the event that we went to. There was something with a smoke machine. Do you remember?
The Raw in Manchester.
Yeah.
I forgot. I can't remember Ricochet being there. Shows how I've gone off Ricochet. I used to like Ricochet. I liked him until I watched that whatever it was, 365 or Day Off or whatever it is, where he just came across as a massive mark who was just glad to be there.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's a fantastic athlete. Go on, hit me up.
So it's based on WWE in the 90s.
Oh, yeah?
you know, because this is a WCW match in the 90s.
Makes perfect sense.
So easy one to start with, although they're all easy, aren't they? But what venue was WrestleMania 9 held?
Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas.
Right.
That's a relatively easy one because the venue's very clear in terms of like, yeah, it was themed around the whole gladiator or Caesar thing,
Yeah.
whereas some of the other ones.
Worst WrestleMania ever?
That seems to be the consensus. Trying to remember what happened. Only slightly good matches. Was there a Shawn Michaels Tatanka match, which I think ended in count out or DQ, which might have been a good match up to that point.
That's the IC belt.
Yeah, and was it Head Shrinkers versus the Steiners? I remember that being reasonable. But I think just the
Frank Gonzalez.
Oh, he was 5 stars. Was it? Could you? They didn't have 7-star matches back then, did they? It's a shame, really. I think. You know the rating scale's gone up to 7 now. It's like in Spinal Tap, like rather than
11.
Yeah. So I mean, Gonzalez was awful, wasn't he? I mean, I know that's his ability to wrestle isn't his thing, but even then, like you have guys of that size who can do something that makes it look like, well, like they're actually.
Giant, for example, he just refused his size, didn't he? And that's all he was, and it worked.
It looked like it was a somewhat legit fight to as much as wrestling ever does, whereas Gonzalez it didn't look. I don't know what it looked like.
The suit was awful.
Yes, I think WrestleMania 9 arguably the worst, I'd say. Yeah, I don't think many people. I think whilst fans probably were happy at the time that Hogan left with the belt, I think longer term that sours the event.
I was a massive Hogan fan.
Yeah.
And I hated it even at the time.
Okay.
Hated it. I think it was just ridiculous. It just seemed so unfair.
On Brett. Or on Yoko.
And Yokozuna.
Poor Yoko.
Yeah.
Did you feel sorry for him?
He did a bit, yeah. I like Yokozuna.
At that point, probably would that be the shortest ever title reign at that point? I suppose Andre's
must have been.
Andre's reign when he beat Hogan, I think, is supposedly runs from the time he pinned Hogan, with a dodgy referee, through to the time he surrenders it to Ted DiBiase. That's when he's decided it's been declared vacant. And I think that may have been marginally less. I think that was like 2 minutes, and Yoko's was 2.5.
Yeah.
But much of a muchness, really.
Right, who shockingly jumped from the WWE to show up in their competitor WCW's first episode of Monday Nitro?
Lex Luger. Easy. Yeah, he was out of contract and they hadn't realised, and just turned up, walked out to show that anything can happen on Nitro. Which I remember the first Nitro. I remember watching that Liger versus Brian Pillman in a rematch from their Super Brawl '92 match. I remember, was it Hogan versus Big Bubba? I think the artist formerly known as the Big Boss Man. And as you said, Luger there wanders out in a fancy white shirt with his super cool mullet.
Say he was out of contract and they hadn't realised.
Yeah, it's happened a few times over the years. I think probably not kind of after that. I think after that they were a bit more attentive to making sure that contract renewals were sorted in time. But yeah, if your contract expires and no one's sorted it with you.
Oh.
Right, okay, right, we've gone. So we need now. I presume it's just finished for you.
Playing them naturally.
Yeah, it's. I think if we copy and paste the title of the match and change it to part 15, there we go. So
mine's just followed straight on into the second video.
But that's not the right one, is it? Or is it?
No, it's not. This is for Macho Man's.
Yeah, we need part 15. So I've just copied the title and changed the 14 to 15. But that's now saying The Outsiders versus Ric Flair and Roddy Piper. That's not what I need. Oh, I know. I see what the problem is. Right, okay. Take the whole title and change part 1 to part 2 rather than part 14 to part 15. So if you search... we've balls this up. I don't think there is a part 2. That's annoying. That is really annoying. I've changed it to same title, but Ric Flair versus Scott Hall with 6 part 2, and nothing is coming up. Well, that's a tease, isn't it? They put on the first part of the match there, but not the second part. See, that's the problem there. it's called Road to Great American Bash because it's part of a playlist showing the build-up to the Great American Bash. So it's just an episode of Nitro.
Hang on, no, it is there.
Or is it? What's it called?
Hang on, is that the right one?
Oh, this is fantastic.
Called DDP versus Scott Hall, Part 2.
Well, that won't be the right match. That's a different person.
No, it's just, I don't know what's going on.
DDP versus Scott Hall.
Put the link in the chat.
That's, I think that's a different one. I think you've gone crazy. Let's see what happens when we look at that then. Ask me a question while we're trying to get that working.
I thought I was Ric Flair on the deck in the ring.
Ask me another quiz question quickly.
What was the main event of Survivor Series 1996?
96 would have been Shawn Michaels defending the world title against Sid. Sid beats him for the title after Michaels has been booed by the New York crowd. He takes a TV camera off the cameraman, bashes Jose Lothario. Yeah, this is not the right one. DDP versus Scott Hall. He got stinged in the crowd. This is a minute and a half long. That would balls it up anyway. It was fine. Let's just talk anyway, and then we know who wins the match and goes through to the final. So yeah, Sid bashes Jose with the camera. Jose pretends to have a heart attack. Shawn hits Sid with a super kick, but rather than pinning him, he's getting his visual win. He goes to tend to his fallen mentor, Jose Lothario, and in the meantime, Sid gets the camera, gives Shawn a bash and a powerbomb, and pins him for the world title, setting up the rematch at the Alamo Dome at Royal Rumble '97. That was a lot more information than you were asking for, wasn't it?
If you were on Mastermind, you'd run out of time just by answering questions.
Well, I'd expand on it for the benefit of the 2 people that are probably listening to this.
I know, and I'm sure they appreciate it as I do. All right, who did The Undertaker defeat to retain his WWE Championship in the main event match of King of the Ring 1997?
These questions, like week on week, month on month, they have less and less to do with the match we're watching, don't they? So it started out like it might be about the match.
Because obviously in the early stages, the quiz will be based on the wrestlers. So obviously there's only so many questions you can ask about an individual wrestler.
I'm not complaining. It was just an observation. Okay. So he beat Farouk.
He did.
He beat Farouk. It's supposed to be Ahmed Johnson, but Ahmed. So he's very injury prone, Ahmed. Now when did Farouk debut? So it wasn't when Farouk kicked him in the kidney. That would have been a year earlier in '96. He was out with something, possibly a bad knee. I think Ahmed was out with. Did you ever see Ahmed Johnson?
No.
So Ahmed Johnson comes in late '95. I don't know if he maybe came on an episode of Raw or something. My first proper memory of him is Survivor Series '95 in the wild card Survivor Series match. He looked phenomenal. He just had a look. Black guy, massive, just huge muscle, a lot of just innate charisma. Like when he came out, you're like, ooh, who's this guy? And he had some funky moves. His finisher was the Pearl River Plunge, which was a tiger bomb, like a double underhook into a sit-out power bomb. He used to do a tope over the top rope, so a running dive over the top rope, where invariably he seemed to land directly on his head on concrete. I'm not even exaggerating, having, just about glanced his opponent, and it never seemed to bother him. So he was pretty cool, and I thought he was on his way to the top, to be honest, but I think just he was so injury prone both himself and in injuring others that I think over time they just gave up on him.
Yeah.
But he was supposed to face Undertaker at King of the Ring '97, got injured. Farouk took his place. Farouk is Ron Simmons, in case you didn't know.
So again?
Farouk is Ron Simmons, in case you didn't know.
Who won a tournament to become the first light heavyweight champion in December 1997?
Taka Michinoku.
Yeah.
Beat the great Suzuki. No. He faced the great Suzuki at In Your House Canadian Stampede earlier in that year. And the tournament final, I think he beat Brian Christopher, Jerry Lawler's son.
Okay.
It was an attempt to capitalise on the success of the WCW Cruiserweight division. But the mistake they made is they didn't get many very good wrestlers in, which is an oversight. So Taka was good. Great Suzuki was brilliant, but only came in for a one shot or maybe a couple of matches. Brian Christopher, he's a perfectly fine little wrestler, but he's not really what you think of as a light heavyweight of the time, doing Rey Mysterio style moves that was happening over on Nitro.
So that belt didn't last very long then.
No, it did. It lasted a number of years. So I think when the invasion happens in 2001, I think it's still active. I think X-Pac, as he's known then, the aforementioned 6 or 123 kid, I think he's the WWF light heavyweight champion. And I think he might have a unification match with someone, possibly Billy Kidman. And then maybe it then gets unified. So it lasts 4-ish years, roughly, maybe more. No, that's right. It gets unified, but becomes the cruiserweight title. So they keep the name of the WCW belt, and then actually it must go on for a good few more years. I think maybe to the mid 2000s, maybe 2005, 6, 7, something like that, before it eventually disappears.
Fair enough.
It was all right. It wasn't as good as the WCW one, but yeah, the answer is Taka Michinoku.
All right. The Brood formed as a group in late 1998. Who were the original members?
Well, it's my mate Dave, Gangrel.
Yes.
You know, I've got Gangrel as a Facebook friend. Have I told you this?
Oh, I thought you meant Dave because we know a Dave Edge.
No, Dave wasn't in the Brood.
No.
I know who Dave Edge is, but he wasn't in the Brood.
No, but one of the Brood was the Edge. That's what I thought the Dave joke was.
Okay. No. No, it's literally my mate Dave, Gangrel. I'll tell you what, just while I'm telling you who the other two are, I'll bring him up. Dave Gangrel Heath is on Facebook. Where is he? Can't find him now. Maybe he's defriended me, the bastard. The other two were Edge and Christian.
Yeah.
There he is. Gangrel, David Heath. Oh, he's got wow. Saved by the Bell. Now, I thought Screech from Saved by the Bell had died. Now, that won't mean that you probably wouldn't know why I'm saying that to you. Let me show you here.
Dustin Diamond.
Yeah, can you see that now?
Yeah.
So there. Yeah. Oh, right. Luna's dead as well. So he's talking about Luna beating up Screech from Saved by the Bell. Sorry, right. Anyway, look, there you go. There's Dave. So Dave used to, I'm dropping names there, trying to sound cool. Gangrel wrestled for All very extensively in the mid-noughties, so that's why I'm Facebook friends with him. And
he's English, I assume, then.
Say again?
So he's English, is he?
No, he's American.
Okay.
Have you never seen Gangrel before? He's a vampire with pointy teeth.
Oh yes, I have. Yeah. So how did you know him then?
From wrestling in the UK in the mid-noughties. He was over there. He wasn't in WWF at that point. He was wrestling for Brian. And then the other two were Edge and Christian.
Correct.
And they used to do blood baths. They pour blood on people.
Yes. I think that's come up before. You told me about that. Very nice. Who was the first hardcore champion on an episode of Raw?
Mankind.
Yes.
Yeah, he was given it by Vince. I think I may have mentioned this on a previous episode of the podcast. Yeah, he was given it by Vince, I think supposedly in recognition of his efforts, in a way to try and, I think, distancing him from the Rock and the world title or whatever was going on at that point. And then, I don't know if he gave it to somebody else or he lost it. He might have lost it to the Big Boss Man, if I remember correctly, actually. And then it went off to become a very mid-card title. So the initial champion was a genuine main eventer, and it very quickly became a mid-card belt afterwards.
Okay. And what was the main event of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre 1999?
Vince McMahon versus Steve Austin in a cage match.
Correct.
Big Show makes his debut. He punches a hole in the bottom of the ring, comes through, attacks Austin, throws him into the cage, causing it to collapse, meaning that Austin then hits the floor first, meaning he gets the world title shot against The Rock at WrestleMania. Because at that point, Vince was the winner of the Rumble, and I think had Austin agreed to a match as long as Vince put the title shot on the line.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And how many times did the Rock and Sock Connection capture the Tag Team Championship in 1999?
I'm going to say 3.
Correct.
Yeah, I knew it wasn't 1 and it wasn't 5. I remember they lost it and regained it a couple of times, so I think that was literally all within a handful of weeks. I mean, they might have won it one week, lost it the next, won it back. like literally over a month or so.
Well done.
Thank you. Full marks
Full
today.
mark.
Yeah. So we didn't actually get to watch the second half of the match there, but it doesn't really matter. We know Ric Flair won. We know for two reasons. Partly because we've already done the final that Flair's in against Brock Lesnar. And we also know because we specifically chose this match because that was the only way we could make the final work, having Flair beat Scott Hall. And I looked on cagematches.net and found the only match I could find where Flair beats Scott Hall. So kind of knew what was going to happen there.
Some might say it's a fix.
Well, it's less of a fix than
theme, aren't we?
It's less of a fix than a normal wrestling tournament.
Yeah. Well, it's not fake; it's fixed.
I mean, ours is only semi-fixed in that, there's some legitimacy in it. We've just had to try and make it work in areas to get where we want to get to, maybe ish.
Yeah.
Anyway, right, guys. So next week is the final, which we have already recorded, I must admit. And after that, well, I'm not going to spoil that. I've figured out how we're going to make the next series work, but we don't mention that until the final coming up next week. So I'll tell you in a minute when I stop recording.